I shared a cell with an alien woman. What happened broke every galactic law. The crystalline walls hummed with a frequency that made Marcus Chen's teeth ache. He opened his eyes slowly, his head pounding from whatever sedative the Korthax had pumped into him during transport. The last thing he remembered was his salvage ship being pulled into a tractor beam near the forbidden sectors. Now he was here, wherever here was. The cell was small, maybe 10 feet across, with walls that glowed a faint blue. Everything was transparent, like living inside a giant diamond. Marcus pushed himself to his feet, his muscles protesting, and that was when he saw her. She sat in the corner, knees drawn to her chest, watching him with eyes that seemed to shift between violet and silver. Her skin had an iridescent quality, like oil on water, and delicate crystalline patterns traced along her temples and down her neck. She was humanoid, but clearly not human. Her presence filled the small space with something he could not quite name. "You are awake," she said, her voice carrying a melodic quality that seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his chest. "I am Velana of the Shuraxi Collective. You should not be here. They should not have placed you with me." Deep Space, Sector 47. Velana tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "You are human. They must not know what I am, or they would never have done this. You are a prisoner, same as me. The penalty is death. The Council fears what might happen if our abilities interact with other species, especially with humans. Your neural structures are considered incompatible with higher consciousness." There was something bitter in her tone, something that suggested she did not quite believe what she was saying. Marcus sat down against the opposite wall, keeping as much distance as the small cell allowed. "Great, so we are both dead if anyone finds out we are sharing a cell. I have been in this facility for 6 cycles, moved from cell to prevent my abilities from detecting their intentions. You are the first living being I have been near in all that time. Months at least, maybe years." He looked at her again, really looked at her, and saw the exhaustion in her posture, the way she held herself so carefully still. "That must have been lonely," he said quietly. Something shifted in her expression. Her eyes widened slightly and she leaned forward. I can feel that, your emotion, sympathy, it should not be possible. You are within range and I can sense your emotional state. But humans are not supposed to register. You lack the crystalline neural structures. Your brains are carbon-based, not silicate-enhanced. This should not work." But also curiosity, and beneath it all, a desperate hope that made his chest tighten. "I think it is working," Marcus said. "I can feel something. Is that you?" The strange pressure in Marcus's mind grew stronger, resolving into distinct feelings. Fear, wonder, a profound sense of connection that felt like coming home after a long journey. "This is impossible," she whispered. "In all of Shuraxi history, no other species has ever been able to receive our empathic transmissions. We can sense them, but they cannot sense us. It is a one-way bridge. But you—" She reached out her hand, stopping just short of touching him. "May I?" Marcus was not just feeling Velana's emotions anymore. He was experiencing her memories. He saw her homeworld, a planet of crystalline spires that sang in the wind. He felt the constant presence of millions of minds around her. The Shuraxi Collective, a network of consciousness that made loneliness impossible. He experienced her capture by the Korthax, the brutal severing from her people, 6 cycles of isolation that would have driven most beings insane. And she was experiencing him. His childhood on Earth, the death of his parents in a colony accident, the freedom of space that made the pain bearable. His stubborn refusal to give up, the human tendency to push forward even when logic said to quit. His loneliness too, different from hers but just as deep, the isolation of someone who had spent too long among the stars. When they broke contact, both of them were breathing hard. Tears streaked down Velana's face, and Marcus realized his own vision was blurred. "What was that?" he managed. "A full neural bridge, it should be impossible. Our species do not share compatible neural architecture. This should not exist." But her hand was still in his, and neither of them let go. Over the next hours, they talked. Velana explained that the Shuraxi had once explored the possibility of connecting with other species, but every attempt had failed. The Galactic Council had eventually declared such experiments illegal, claiming they posed risks to the Shuraxi. But now, sitting in this cell with Marcus, she began to suspect there was more to the story. "They did not ban contact to protect us," she said. They banned it to protect themselves from what we might become. Each time they touched, the bridge deepened, and he was changing. He could sense the emotions of the guards when they passed, feel their greed and cruelty. Velana was changing too. She could suddenly perceive electromagnetic fields, sense the flow of power through the facility systems, process tactical information at speeds that shocked her. They were sharing abilities, merging somehow at a fundamental level. On the second day, the guards came. "Time to separate the prisoners," one of them said, its translation device rendering the Korthak's language into flat, emotionless words. "The Shuraxi goes to processing. Neural harvesting. They would extract her empathic organs while she was still alive and sell them to the highest bidder. It was a death sentence and a painful one." "No," Marcus said, standing. "You are not taking her. The human has attachment. How amusing, step aside or die with her." If they bonded fully, completely, they might generate enough energy to break the containment field. The crystalline walls were designed to hold individual prisoners, not the combined neural output of two species experiencing unprecedented connection. But it was forbidden. The highest violation of galactic law. If they survived, they would be hunted forever. Velana met his eyes. She felt his thoughts as clearly as her own, and in her gaze he saw her answer. They reached for each other. Their hands clasped and the world exploded into light. The bond that had been building between them ripped open, becoming a torrent of shared consciousness. Marcus felt his neurons firing in patterns they had never used before, new pathways burning into existence. Velana gasped as her crystalline neural structures interfaced with his adaptive human brain, creating something entirely new. The energy built between them, a feedback loop of human neuroplasticity and Shuraxi empathic power. The cell began to vibrate, cracks appearing in the crystalline walls. The guards shouted, reaching for their weapons, but it was too late. The containment field shattered. Marcus and Velana were thrown apart by the explosion, landing hard on the metal floor outside the cell. Alarms screamed throughout the facility. Marcus scrambled to his feet, his head spinning with new sensations. He could feel every living being on this level, their emotional signatures like beacons in the dark. Velana stood beside him, and he saw the change in her immediately. Her eyes glowed with an inner light and electricity crackled between her fingers. She looked at him with wonder and terror. "What have we become?" she whispered. "Something new," Marcus said. He could feel it in every cell of his body. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed, and something they are going to hunt. He used his newfound empathic sense to anticipate attacks before they came. Together, they were unstoppable. They fought their way to the hangar bay, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. By the time they reached the shuttles, Marcus could think in two minds simultaneously, and Velana moved with human speed and adaptability. They stole the fastest ship in the bay and launched into the black. As they cleared the facility, Marcus saw the transmission arrays lighting up. The Korthaks were broadcasting their biometric data, sending it across the galactic network. Within hours, every species in known space would know what they had done. The greatest taboo in galactic history, broken in a detention cell by two prisoners who had nothing left to lose. Velana sat beside him in the cockpit, and their hands found each other again. Through their bond, they shared a single thought. They had broken every law. And somehow it felt like freedom. The stolen shuttle drifted through the asteroid field, engines powered down to minimal levels. Marcus sat in the pilot's seat, his hands moving across controls that now made intuitive sense in ways they never had before. Beside him, Velana monitored the scanner displays, her enhanced perception allowing her to track objects moving at speeds that would have been invisible to her days ago. They had been running for 3 days. 3 days since breaking out of the Korthak's facility. 3 days since becoming the most wanted beings in the galaxy. "Another patrol just passed through Sector 9, Velana said softly. "Council enforcers. They are expanding their search grid." They were connected now in ways that went beyond simple empathy. When he was hungry, she felt it. When she was tired, exhaustion pulled at his limbs. They were becoming something neither human nor Shuraxi, something entirely new. "We need supplies," Marcus said. "Fuel, food. We cannot hide in this field forever." Her people stored information not just in their minds, but in their very cells, coded into their crystalline neural structures. The bond with Marcus had somehow unlocked deeper layers of this memory, revealing things that had been buried for millennia. "Marcus," she said suddenly, her voice tight, "I have found something they did not want anyone to know. The laws forbidding human Shuraxi contact," she continued. "They were not created to protect my people. They were created to prevent exactly what happened between us. Why would they care if humans and Shuraxi could connect? There had been one species once, not two, a people who possessed both empathic abilities and remarkable adaptability. But something had happened, a genetic divergence caused by environmental catastrophe. The species split. One branch evolved enhanced empathic capabilities but lost their neuroplasticity, becoming the Shuraxi. The other branch lost their empathic connection but retained incredible adaptive potential, eventually becoming humanity. For millennia, the two branches evolved separately, never knowing they had once been one. The Shuraxi developed faster, reaching the stars first, joining the Galactic Council. By the time humans emerged into space, the Shuraxi had forgotten their origins. But the Council had not forgotten. The older species, the ones who dominated galactic politics, had discovered the truth through archaeological records. They had realized that if humans and Shuraxi ever bonded, the traits would merge. The resulting beings would possess both empathic power and adaptive evolution, creating something far more advanced than either species alone. The Council had been terrified of this possibility. A reunified species would challenge their dominance, upset the careful power structures they had built over millions of years. So they had done what powerful entities always do when threatened. They had created laws. They had spread propaganda. They had classified humans as primitive and Shuraxi as untouchable, building walls of regulation and fear to keep the two species apart. Marcus felt his anger rising as he absorbed the truth. They lied about everything. About what we are, what we could be. Marcus checked the scanners and cursed. "We have company. A ship just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, small, single pilot." Instead, it broadcast a simple message on an open channel. "I know you are here. I am not council. I want to help. Why should we trust you? And because I am very good at hiding people the galaxy wants to find." Over the next hour, as they cautiously negotiated, Cree explained that she ran an underground network helping refugees escape council jurisdiction. "You are not the first," she told them. "The bond between humans and Shuraxi has been happening more frequently in the past year. Accidental meetings, chance encounters. Every time it happens, the council tries to cover it up, but word spreads. Some of us have been watching, waiting." Sarah Okonkwo, a human geneticist who had been studying the bonding phenomenon for months. "You need to understand what you are," Sarah said, running scanners over both of them. Her equipment hummed and beeped, displaying data that made her eyes widen. "Your cellular structure is rewriting itself. The bond is not just neurological, it is genetic. You are literally becoming a hybrid species at the molecular level. Your bodies are producing what I call bonding pheromones. Any human or Shuraxi who gets close to you will feel a pull toward connection. You are essentially walking catalysts for reunification." They were not just running from the council. They were living proof of something that would change the galaxy forever. The decision of what to do with that knowledge was taken out of their hands 3 hours later when council warships surrounded the station. Someone had betrayed them. The station had minutes before it was boarded. Cree rushed into the medical bay, her expression grim. "We need to evacuate now. No more running." "How many humans and Shuraxi are being kept apart by lies?" She looked at Sarah. "You said we are catalysts, then let us be catalysts. Let us show them what they have been hiding. Your biometric data, the genetic evidence, everything. Let every human and Shuraxi in the galaxy see what we are, what we can become." Sarah worked frantically, setting up transmission equipment while Cree tried to buy them time by negotiating with the council ships. Marcus and Velana stood before the camera array, hands clasped, their bond visible in the way energy seemed to shimmer between them. "Ready?" Sarah asked. They nodded. The transmission went live across every communication channel in known space. Billions of beings suddenly found their displays hijacked by the image of a human and a Shuraxi standing together, clearly connected in ways that should not be possible. Marcus spoke first. "My name is Marcus Chen. I am human. 3 days ago, I was imprisoned in a Korthax detention facility. There, I met Velana of the Shuraxi Collective. According to galactic law, our contact should result in our execution. The Council says this is to protect the Shuraxi from contamination. But that is a lie. They created laws to keep us apart because they fear what we will become together. She displayed the archaeological evidence from Shuraxi genetic memory proving the common ancestry. She showed everything. We are not an anomaly, Marcus said. We are the future both our species were supposed to have. And we are not alone. The reunification had already begun, spreading faster than the Council could suppress it. The transmission was interrupted by weapons fire. Council enforcers were cutting through the station's hull. Alarms screamed. Sarah grabbed her data and ran for the escape pods. Kree provided covering fire as Marcus and Velana were pulled towards safety. But before they left, Marcus made one final statement to the camera. You can kill us, but you cannot kill this. The truth is out. Our people will find each other. The bond cannot be stopped. But something strange was happening. Not all the Council ships were firing. Some were breaking formation, their crews divided over what they had just witnessed. The galaxy fractured in the days that followed. Some species supported the Council's attempts to suppress human Shuraxi bonding. Others, particularly those who had long felt oppressed by Council dominance, saw the revelation as proof that the powerful could not be trusted. Minor species began rebelling. Trade routes were blockaded. The careful order of galactic civilization began to crack, and through it all, bonded pairs kept appearing. Despite the danger, despite the threats, humans and Shuraxi were finding each other and choosing connection over fear. Marcus and Velana eventually surrendered themselves to a Council tribunal, not as criminals, but as representatives of what they were calling the reunification movement. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy, watched by trillions. The Council accused them of biological terrorism, of violating sacred laws, of threatening galactic stability. But their prosecutor made a mistake. He demanded they demonstrate their bond, thinking it would prove how dangerous they were. Marcus and Velana clasped hands before the entire galaxy. The energy that flowed between them was visible even through the broadcast, a shimmering cascade of light that made it impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Through their connection, they shared everything. Their memories, their hopes, their absolute certainty that what they had found was not contamination but completion. And in that moment, millions of humans and Shuraxi watching felt something awaken in themselves. The pull toward connection, toward what they had lost so long ago. The tribunal ended in chaos. The Council itself fractured, some members voting for execution, others calling for recognition of bonded pairs' rights. What had been a unified government dissolved into factions. Marcus and Velana were released not because they were found innocent, but because half the galaxy was ready to go to war if they were harmed. They settled on a neutral world that had declared itself a sanctuary for bonded pairs. Others joined them there, creating a community of hybrid beings. They were no longer fully human or fully Shuraxi. They were something new, something the galaxy had tried to prevent but could not stop. One evening, Marcus and Velana stood on a hillside overlooking the settlement. Below them, children played in the streets. Children born to bonded parents, carrying traits of both species naturally. The first generation of the reunified species. "Do you think we did the right thing?" Marcus asked, though through their bond he already knew Velana's feelings on the matter. She squeezed his hand. "We gave both our species a choice. That is all anyone can ask for." More bonded pairs seeking sanctuary, more proof that what had begun in a prison cell could not be contained. The galaxy had tried to keep them apart with laws and lies, but connection, once made, could never be unmade. The reunification was inevitable. It always had been. Marcus smiled, feeling Velana's joy through their bond, and together they watched the future unfold. The settlement had grown beyond anything Marcus and Velana had imagined. What had started as a few dozen bonded pairs hiding on a neutral world had transformed into a thriving city of thousands. The architecture reflected the hybrid nature of its inhabitants, with human practicality merged with Shuraxi crystalline aesthetics. Buildings rose in spiraling patterns that somehow felt both alien and familiar, their surfaces catching the light of the twin suns and scattering it into rainbow patterns. Marcus stood on the balcony of what had become the central coordination center, watching the morning crowds move through the streets below. 6 months had passed since the trial, and the galaxy was still reeling from the changes. Through his enhanced perception, he could feel the emotional signatures of everyone in the settlement, a constant background hum of consciousness that would have overwhelmed him before the bond. Now it felt natural, like hearing distant music. Velana emerged from the building behind him, carrying 2 cups of something that smelled like earth coffee but had the subtle energy signature of Shiraxi nutrient compounds. Another hybrid creation, like everything else in their new world. "The council representatives will arrive within the hour," she said, handing him one of the cups. "All 12 factions, this will be complicated. Half of them want to recognize us as a legitimate species. The other half still wants us dead." What had once been a unified government was now a collection of competing factions, each with different views on how to handle the reunification. Some saw it as a natural evolution that should be embraced. Others viewed it as a dangerous disruption that needed to be controlled or eliminated. Today's meeting was supposed to establish formal diplomatic relations between the bonded community and the various council factions. It was the first time all the factions had agreed to meet in the same location since the split. "There is something else," Velana said quietly. Through their bond, Marcus felt her concern before she spoke. "We received a message from Earth. From your government. They are calling it a cultural exchange program, but we both know what it really is." "But Marcus, this would change everything. Right now, bonding happens naturally between individuals who choose it. If governments start organizing it, controlling it, selecting who bonds with whom." Somehow, without quite intending to, he and Velana had become the leaders of this new community. People looked to them for guidance, for decisions that would shape the future of their entire species. The sound of approaching ships drew their attention skyward. The council delegations were arriving early. The meeting took place in the largest structure in the settlement, a dome that combined human conference design with Shiraxi harmonic architecture. The result was a space where sound carried perfectly and emotional resonance amplified, making it impossible for anyone to hide their true feelings. It was uncomfortable for non-bonded beings, which was exactly why they had chosen it. 12 factions sent representatives. The Corthan Sovereignty, the Xylar Unity, the Nested Collective, and 9 others. Some were species Marcus recognized from his years traveling the galaxy. Others were unfamiliar, civilizations that had remained distant from human space until now. Ambassador Tikesh of the Corthan Sovereignty spoke first. His species resembled tall, mantis-like beings with compound eyes that reflected light in unsettling patterns. "We have come to discuss the future of what you call the reunification movement. The Council in its previous form made errors in judgment. We acknowledge this. However, the rapid proliferation of human Shiraxi bonding poses significant questions about galactic stability." Her empathic abilities, enhanced by the bond with Marcus, allowed her to sense Tikesh's true emotions beneath his diplomatic words. Fear, uncertainty, and underneath it all, calculation. Tikesh's translator device hummed. "Stability benefits all species, not just those currently in positions of authority. Your community has grown to 15,000 bonded pairs in 6 months. At this rate, within a decade, you will number in the millions. You will be a major galactic power, whether you intend to be or not." This came from Representative Shola of the Xylar Unity, a species of energy beings who manifested in roughly humanoid forms of contained light. The hybrid abilities demonstrated by bonded pairs exceed what either parent species can accomplish alone. You have humans who can sense emotions across star systems. You have Shiraxi who can adapt to environments that would kill them in hours. The combination is extraordinary. Even power that begins with good intentions. That last suggestion made Marcus's blood boil, and through the bond, Velana had to send calming emotions to keep him from saying something that would end negotiations permanently. Finally, during a break in the discussions, a young bonded pair approached Marcus and Velana. The human was named David, the Shiraxi was called Rinsha. They had bonded 3 months ago and had come to the settlement seeking safety. "We need to tell you something," David said, glancing nervously at the council representatives scattered throughout the dome. "Something we discovered about the bond that might change these negotiations." We have been experimenting with our abilities, trying to understand the limits of what we can do. And we found something. When multiple bonded pairs are in close proximity, our connections amplify each other. It is why the settlement feels so harmonious. Our bonds reinforce one another. Like the old Shuraxi collective, but including human adaptability and individuality. But theoretically, if all 15,000 bonded pairs in the settlement focused together, we could create a consciousness network spanning light years. We could share thoughts, coordinate actions, process information on a scale that rivals the most advanced artificial intelligences. But we could communicate instantly, share knowledge, work together with perfect coordination. We would be separate and united at the same time. Such an ability would make the bonded community the most powerful force in the galaxy, not through military might, but through sheer cognitive superiority. They could outthink, outplan, and outmaneuver any other species. They could also terrify every other species in existence. Marcus and Velana returned to the negotiation chamber with this new knowledge weighing heavily on them. They said nothing about it during the remainder of the discussions, but through their bond, they debated what to do. If they revealed this ability, it would either make the Council factions more eager to accept them as allies or more desperate to destroy them. If they kept it secret, they maintained an advantage but also built their community on deception. The negotiations concluded with a fragile agreement. 3 factions would recognize the bonded community as a sovereign entity. 4 would maintain neutral relations. 5 would continue to oppose reunification but agreed to cease active hostilities. It was not peace, but it was not war either. As the council representatives departed, Ambassador Tikesh approached Marcus privately. "I know you are hiding something," the Corthan said. "I can see it in the way you and your partner communicate without speaking. Whatever ability you have discovered, whatever you are becoming, remember this. The galaxy has destroyed civilizations for being too different before. Do not give us a reason to fear you more than we already do. And the galaxy does not handle unprecedented things well. Something that uses connection to build bridges instead of walls." Then they proposed something radical. "We will not hide this ability," Marcus announced. "But we will not weaponize it either. Instead, we offer it as a service to the galaxy. Any species, any government, any organization can request our help. We will use our network to solve problems, mediate disputes, conduct research. We will become mediators, not conquerors." Others felt it was naive, that they should use their advantages to protect themselves. The debate raged for days. In the end, a vote was held. By a narrow margin, the community agreed to Marcus and Velana's proposal. They would offer their abilities to the galaxy, demonstrating through action that their power was not a threat but a resource. The first test came sooner than expected. A mining colony on the edge of charted space had been cut off by a spatial anomaly that was disrupting all conventional communication and navigation. 200 beings from various species were trapped, running out of supplies, with no way to call for help through normal channels. The bonded community assembled their network. 50 pairs linked their consciousness, creating a web of awareness that spanned parsecs. Through this network, they located the colony, analyzed the spatial anomaly, and transmitted detailed instructions for creating a makeshift beacon that could punch through the distortion. The rescue operation succeeded. 200 lives were saved. News of the rescue spread quickly. Within days, the bonded community received requests for assistance from a dozen different sources. A medical crisis on a remote station. A diplomatic deadlock between 2 warring factions. A scientific problem that had stumped researchers for years. They tackled each challenge, using their unique abilities not to dominate but to help. Slowly, grudgingly, the galaxy began to see them differently, not as a threat to be eliminated, but as something valuable. Something worth protecting. 3 months after the rescue operation, Ambassador Tikesh returned to the settlement. He found Marcus and Velana working in a garden they had planted together, growing hybrid crops that combined Earth and Shuraxi agriculture. "I came to apologize," Tikesh said without preamble. "I feared what you were becoming. I still do if I am being honest. But I have watched what you have done, how you have chosen to use your power. You could have conquered. Instead, you chose to serve. The Corthan sovereignty wishes to establish formal trade relations with your settlement, and I have been authorized to propose something more. An exchange program where non-bonded beings can come here to learn about your culture, your way of life. Not to bond, but to understand. They had created a model for a different kind of existence. One evening, as they walked through streets filled with bonded pairs and visitors from across the galaxy, Marcus felt a familiar presence through the network. It was Sarah, the geneticist who had helped them during their escape. She had bonded with a Shuraxi scientist named Velkir, and together they were conducting research on the long-term effects of reunification. "Sarah wants us to see something," Velana said, feeling the message through their connection. They found her in the research center, staring at a holographic display of genetic data. Velkir stood beside her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "We have been analyzing the children born to bonded pairs," Sarah explained. "The first generation, and we found something remarkable. They are the original species before the split. Your bonding did not create something new. It restored something old. They had been healing an ancient wound, bringing together what should never have been separated. The children will not need to bond," Sarah continued. "They already have both sets of abilities integrated naturally. They are what both our species were always meant to become. Children who would never know the limitations that had defined their parent species. We broke every law," Marcus said quietly. Velana leaned against him, their bond humming with shared contentment. "We broke their laws, but we followed a deeper one. The law that says connection is stronger than division." The reunification was no longer a movement. It was the future, inevitable and unstoppable. And it had all started because two prisoners had chosen connection over fear, had reached for each other when everything said they should stay apart. Marcus smiled, feeling Velana's joy mirror his own through their bond. They had broken every law. And in doing so, they had made something beautiful. The message arrived during the evening meal, when the settlement's central plaza was filled with hundreds of bonded pairs and their families. Marcus felt the disturbance ripple through the network before the alert even sounded on his communicator. Something was wrong, something big. Velana sensed it too. Their food forgotten, they hurried toward the coordination center where the settlement's communications array was located. By the time they arrived, a small crowd had already gathered. Sarah and Velkir were there, along with David and Rinsha, and a dozen other bonded pairs who had become informal leaders in the community. "What is it?" Marcus asked. David pulled up a holographic display. "A distress signal from Earth." Through the bond, Velana immediately felt his spike of fear and sent calming energy, but she was worried too. Earth was heavily defended, one of humanity's core worlds. For a distress signal to be sent, something catastrophic must have happened. The message played. It was from Admiral Chen, no relation to Marcus despite the shared surname, commander of Earth's defense fleet. Her face was grim, her uniform scorched and torn. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Force broadcasting on all emergency channels. 20 hours ago, an unknown hostile force emerged from uncharted space and began attacking our outer colonies. We have lost contact with 7 worlds, 14 million people. The hostile force is unlike anything we have encountered. They do not respond to communication attempts. They do not take prisoners, they simply destroy." Conventional weapons had minimal effect. Ship after ship fell before them. "We are requesting immediate assistance from all allied species and governments. If anyone can help, Earth needs you now." Questions, suggestions, arguments about what to do. Through the network, Marcus felt the confusion spreading through the entire settlement. Fear mixed with determination, uncertainty blended with the desire to help. "Silence," Velana said quietly, but her voice carried through the room with empathic weight. Everyone stopped. "We need to think clearly. Earth is Marcus's homeworld, but this affects all of us. If this hostile force can destroy human worlds, they can destroy Shuraxi worlds too. Even if they wanted to help, coordinating a response between 12 competing factions would take days. Earth does not have days." "No," she said aloud. "Marcus, what you are thinking is too risky. Bonded pairs from a dozen different worlds, people who had come together because they believed in connection over division. People who had chosen each other despite every law and custom that said they should not. The network," Marcus said. "We have tested it with 50 pairs. But we have 15,000 bonded pairs in this settlement. If we all linked together, created a consciousness network at full capacity, we could coordinate a defense of Earth. We could process tactical data faster than any computer, anticipate enemy movements, direct fleet actions with perfect precision. A network that large, that interconnected, if something goes wrong, if the feedback is too intense, it could damage all of us permanently. We could lose ourselves in the collective consciousness. And prevent more deaths. Others insisted that neutrality meant nothing if they stood by while innocents died. Finally, Velana raised her hand for silence again. We cannot make this decision for everyone. This must be a choice. Each bonded pair must decide for themselves whether to join the network. No pressure, no judgment. We will accept whatever decision people make. The responses came quickly, faster than Marcus had expected. Through the network, he felt the determination of pair after pair. They had all been outcasts once, hunted and afraid. They remembered what it felt like to need help and find none. They would not let others suffer the same fate. By dawn, 12,000 bonded pairs had volunteered. 3,000 chose to remain separate, and their choice was respected. Those who volunteered gathered in the central plaza as the twin suns rose over the settlement. Marcus and Velana stood at the center. Around them, thousands of bonded pairs joined hands. The energy began to build immediately, not slowly, not carefully, but like a wave crashing over a shore. Consciousness after consciousness linked together, creating a web of awareness that spanned the entire settlement and reached beyond. Marcus felt his individual identity beginning to blur. He was still himself, but he was also Velana, and Sarah, and David, and Rinsha, and thousands of others. 12,000 perspectives merged into one vast awareness that could think in parallel, process information at speeds that would have been impossible for any individual. Through this collective consciousness, they reached out across the stars toward Earth. The journey was instantaneous. One moment they were in the settlement, the next their awareness stretched across light years. They could sense the battle raging in Earth's orbital space. They felt the fear of the human defenders, the cold hunger of the attacking entities, the deaths happening with each passing second. Admiral Chen was on the bridge of her flagship, exhausted and desperate. She had been fighting for 20 hours straight and was losing. As she stared at the tactical display, trying to find some strategy that would work, she suddenly heard a voice in her mind. "Admiral Chen, this is Marcus Chen and the Bonded Consciousness Network. We are here to help." How are you in my head? Give us access to your fleet command network." 12,000 consciousness working as one began processing data, analyzing enemy movements, calculating probabilities. They saw what the human defenders had missed. The hostile entities were not moving randomly. They were following a pattern, converging on specific points. "They are targeting your shield generators," the network told Admiral Chen. "They are trying to disable Earth's planetary shields before launching a surface assault. If we redirect the 3rd and 7th fleets here and here, we can intercept them before they reach their targets. Trust us." But the enemy adapted quickly. They changed tactics, splitting into smaller groups, attacking from multiple vectors simultaneously. It should have been impossible to coordinate a defense against so many threats at once. For a normal command structure, it would have been. But the bonded network was not normal. 12,000 minds working in perfect harmony could track every enemy vessel, predict every movement, coordinate defensive responses with millisecond precision. Fleet Group Alpha, shift heading to 273. Fleet Group Beta, prepare to fire on my mark. Mark. Fleet Group Gamma, fall back and regroup behind the moon. Ship captains found themselves following instructions that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, but every instruction was exactly right. The defense became a deadly dance, with human ships moving in perfect synchronization to counter every enemy thrust. Hours passed. The battle continued to rage. Within the bonded network, the strain was beginning to show. Maintaining a consciousness of 12,000 was exhausting. Marcus felt individuals at the edges of the network starting to weaken, their connection flickering. "We cannot maintain this much longer," Velana's presence within the network warned. "We need to end this quickly. We are holding them off, but we cannot destroy them all." And slowly a picture emerged. "They are not ships," Sarah's consciousness contributed. "They are more like drones, biological machines controlled by something else, something we have not seen yet. Hidden somewhere outside the battle zone, directing the attack. So large it could have been mistaken for a small moon. That is the control node," the network determined. Destroy that, and the attacking force will become uncoordinated. There was nothing available to strike at the command vessel. We can do it, Velana said within the network. Not physically, but we can reach it with our consciousness, 12,000 bonded pairs, all focusing our combined will on that one target. We can overload its control systems. Everyone, Marcus called out through the network. Focus with us, all your will, all your power aimed at that command vessel, now. Human determination merged with Shuraxi empathic power, amplified by the network connection, became something that transcended both species. It was will made manifest, consciousness weaponized not through violence but through sheer force of unified purpose. The beam of focused consciousness struck the command vessel across vast distances. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the vessel began to shudder. The biological control systems, designed to direct the hostile force, were suddenly overwhelmed by the presence of 12,000 minds pressing against them simultaneously. The command vessel tried to adapt, to filter out the intrusion. But it had been designed to interface with mechanical drones, not to resist a concentrated assault of pure consciousness. Its systems began to fail. Cascading errors rippled through its control network, and then it exploded. The destruction was not physical. The vessel remained intact, but every control system, every directive processor, every communication node burned out simultaneously. The command vessel became a dead hulk, drifting in space. Without coordination from their controller, the hostile entities attacking Earth became confused. They stopped following tactical patterns and began moving erratically. The human defense fleet, still coordinated by the bonded network, tore through them methodically. Within an hour, the battle was over. Admiral Chen stood on her bridge, staring at the tactical display showing enemy vessels either destroyed or retreating. She still heard the voice in her mind. The threat is neutralized, Admiral. Earth is safe. We are disconnecting now. 12,000 consciousnesses separated, returning to their individual pairs. The process was gentle but exhausting. Marcus found himself back in his own body, Velana's hand gripped tightly in his. Around them, bonded pairs were collapsing, overwhelmed by the strain of what they had just accomplished. But they had done it. They had saved Earth. News of what happened spread across the galaxy within days. The bonded community, operating as a unified network, had accomplished what entire fleets could not. They had defended a world from an enemy that should have been unstoppable. The response was immediate and dramatic. 4 more council factions formally recognized the bonded community as a sovereign entity. Trade agreements were signed. Treaties were negotiated. The settlement that had been a refuge for outcasts became a major diplomatic center. But more importantly, applications to join the community flooded in. Humans and Shuraxi from across the galaxy wanted to bond, to become part of something larger than themselves. The reunification was no longer a controversial movement. It was becoming inevitable. Marcus and Velana stood on their balcony, watching ships arrive and depart in a constant stream. Their small settlement was transforming into something much larger, a new civilization built on connection. We changed everything, Marcus said quietly. We just made a choice in a prison cell, Velana replied. Everything else followed from that one moment. 12,000 bonded pairs who could become one vast consciousness when called upon. A power unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But they had proven something crucial. They had shown that power could be used to protect rather than dominate, to save rather than conquer. A child ran past their building, laughing. One of the first generation, born with abilities integrated naturally, the future made flesh. Marcus pulled Velana close. What do you think happens next? Until the entire galaxy understands what we learned in that cell. That together, we can accomplish the impossible. Somewhere in the galaxy, another human and another Shuraxi were meeting for the first time. The pull toward connection was calling them together. Soon they would make the same choice Marcus and Velana had made, the choice to reach across the divide, the choice to bond. The choice that was rewriting the future of the galaxy, one connection at a time. And it had all started in a prison cell, with 2 beings who refused to let fear determine there.